What is up, everybody? My name is Michael, and woo, it has been a long time since I've made a video. One of the reasons for that is I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I probably have in past recordings. My computer has been dying. The hard drive was dying, I was getting a lot of crashes, and I was just worried about all my information and, you know, stuff like that, and rushing to make backups, and I've been saving up money to upgrade. It's been 3.5 years since I upgraded my PC, so it's definitely due time, and my dying hard drive gave me a good excuse to upgrade some parts. So I got a new hard drive, and I got my very first, well, I got a new hard drive. I still need to get another SATA 3 cable to add it into my computer, but I also got my very first SSD. I've never owned an SSD before, but man, I am not going back to hard drives for boot drives. Solid state drives are incredibly fast, and like all of my programs that are installed on it loading up extremely fast. It's really awesome to see. I'm so glad to finally be able to upgrade my computer now. And also I got a new video card, a GTX 970, so a very good one. I think it's supercharged and also has the AC cooling system in it. I think it's called the AC cooling system. I can't remember what it's called. It's some extra enhanced cooling system they added in on some of the cards, and so because my CPU and stuff like that, like I was planning on just building a whole new computer, but I went to the Build a PC subreddit and I listed my parts, and people were saying, you know, I didn't have to replace my Mobo, I didn't have to replace my you know, CPU or power supply or anything like that. So I was like, okay, well, I'll spend a little bit extra money in getting a 250 gig solid state drive and a pretty good video card. So that's what I did, and yeah, everything's running beautifully now. Once I get my actual hard drive going on, I'll probably start making even more videos, just because I'm not going to put a whole bunch of files onto my solid state drive right now. I want to keep my solid state drive free of space, mostly just for frequently used programs and applications, rather than, you know, files like video files and pictures and stuff like that. Hard drives are better for that, so I'm waiting for that. But I did want to make a video for you guys just to sort of update you on what's going on. But I'm definitely gonna be getting back into making videos and stuff like that, and you know, I'm gonna probably make an article pretty soon about what I want to do sort of in the upcoming months, because yeah, I've been sort of just lollygagging around. I'm just moseying on through life, and I think it's time to actually get some things done. And now that I have my new computer, I can do a lot more things. I want to start streaming again. I have to reinstall all the crap for that. That's going to take a while, and reset up everything, so that'll be a little bit of a pain in the ass. But and also I'm going to be starting my 3D modeling again. I'm super excited about that with the new video card I have, and a new hard drive and everything. Everything will run much smoother and render much faster, so that'll be nice. And I'll definitely be making more Hearthstone stuff. And I actually want to try to make a push for Legend possibly next season. So, because, you know, as a deck builder, I love building decks, but honestly, I think I have the skill to get to Legend, but because I play so many different decks, I don't stay with one deck, and I also play a lot of gimmicky decks sometimes. That's obviously going to hold me back. So I'm really going to try to fine-tune some of the decks that I have here, and use those to possibly try and get to Legend next season. Obviously, no clue what the meta is going to be for next season, but the decks I'm about to show you today are all of sort of the decks that I've created over the past little while, that I've had a lot of fun with and have had the best win rates. So most of them are Hunter, Warrior, and Druid, I think. I don't really play any other classes. Those are my main classes, and I feel they're some of the best classes. But anyways, let's get on with that. I don't want to make this video too long. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of stuff. One of them is a Warlock deck, but the Warlock deck is mostly just a staple handlock deck with my own little dragon twist on it, because I feel dragons in a handlock deck are actually pretty cool. And it actually throws people off guard a lot. And I really like the additions of dragons and handlock. Obviously, we're sacrificing a bunch of stuff, but as usual, as a deck builder, I love the sort of unexpected factor when including cards in my deck. You know, they can steal wins just as much as tech cards can. So I feel it's as long as it doesn't hinder the synergy of the deck too much, I think it's perfectly fine to add in some more unique strategies or cards in your deck. So the first two decks that I have, Ancient Druid and Big Control, I've already showed you guys those decks, so I don't really need to go through those ones. Those are just really fun Druid decks, so I haven't disassembled them yet. I really wish they had more deck slots in Hearthstone, but you know, that's just coming from an avid deck builder. So I understand that you don't really need more deck slots, but it would be nice. So let's get on with it. So Hunter Mess. So this is I got the idea from watching a lot of, when Zoo was really popular. I got the idea for this Hunter deck. I don't really know why, but I wanted to try include Violet Teacher in a Hunter deck because a lot of the spells you use, well, you have a lot of spells in Hunter that, aren't spells just for damage or removal or something like that. Like, for example, Animal Companion, Unleash the Hounds, you play those cards to get board control, but also with Violet Teacher, it's a spell, so it does count towards, just getting extra board presence on the field, which is pretty sweet. And then I figured, okay, well, let's try sort of a Zoo type strategy where you are utilizing those little 1/1s and things like that. So obviously we don't have cards like Power Overwhelming, and we don't have a lot of really fun cards like that. We don't have Imp Gang Boss, and we're not typical Zoo. I mean, I also wanted to try this sort of Zoo-like strategy in Hunter because, well, come on, it's Hunter. We're playing beasts, right? It's the real Zoo. So that's pretty much the idea with this deck. As you can see, we are using very similar cards as Warlock Zoo. The thing about Hunter Zoo, I think, obviously we're trading cards like Power Overwhelming and some of the other more typical Warlock Zoo cards, because we're obviously not playing Warlock. We're also sacrificing the hero ability of card draw. So rather than keeping up a consistent presence, I think what Hunter has over Warlock Zoo is better burst potential and just more pressure. Like, obviously Warlock has quite a bit of pressure, but Hunter, just due to the hero power, you can progress games a little bit faster to your win condition. You can whittle them down a little bit faster, and it also helps in racing and stuff like that. Whereas if you're Warlock and you're getting outraced, using your hero power, you're sure you're going to be drawing into cards, but unless you can draw into something that stabilizes you, you're really just helping them race against you. And there is quite a bit of burst potential with this Hunter, obviously playing double quick shot and double kill command and double unleash the hounds. There's a lot of ways we can actually get a bunch of damage through. I mean, that's typical of Hunter. It's one of the reasons why you don't want to overextend against a Hunter, just because of Unleash the Hounds. They can do a bunch of damage in conjunction with their hero power and things like that. In addition, with Unleash the Hounds, again, like sort of a Zoo-like strategy, if we're trying to use it for board control, we can always use all of our other cards to actually help with board trades and stuff like that. So ideally, that's what, the idea with this deck is just get an early board presence with a lot of our 2-drops, and then using cards to sort of just progress that and weave in hero powers to potentially just burst them down with spells or Unleash the Hounds, because it's really not too hard to burst down your opponent with this deck. One of the cards I really have loved in these decks is Nerubian Egg. I'm a huge fan of Nerubian Egg. It's like one of my favorite cards in Hearthstone. Just being able to trade with something potentially and get a 4/4 out of it. Early on it can start racing, but later on it also is board wipe insurance, which is really important when you're playing sort of these weenie type decks where you have a lot of little guys, and cards like Consecration and things like that are really hindering to your strategy. So that's why we have cards like Haunted Creeper and Nerubian Egg. They're really just good cards to sort of keep a board presence going and to just keep threatening your opponent's board. But yeah, that's the idea with this deck, is just make favorable trades early on with our sticky minions and cards like Abusive Sergeant to trade up. We have a lot of flexibility with cards like Feign Death. I really liked Feign Death, actually. It's pretty fun as a 1-of. I know it's not great, but with Violet Teacher out, you can make a 1/1, get a 4/4, and maybe even if Savannah Hyman's on there, you can get a bunch of 2/2s. It's a card that, with the right board setup, you can just really get a lot of value out of it for 2 mana. Obviously, it can be a dead card a lot of the time, so that's why we're only including 1. But even if we have to use it to just get a couple of 1/1s with Haunted Creeper, we have a lot of ways to use those 1/1s. So there's not too much of a value. I mean, obviously we're getting 2 1/1s for 2 mana, which is not great, but we still get to keep our Haunted Creeper around, which is a sticky minion. And also, since we have so many ways of utilizing those 1/1s, it's not terrible at all. It would be nice if those 1/1s from Haunted Creeper were actually beasts, but, not terrible. But yeah, that's the idea with this deck, is just keep get some early board presence going on and pressure your opponent into just being on the back foot at all times until you can just sort of burst them down with Kill Command, Unleash the Hounds, Quick Shots, Hero Powers, Bestial Wraths, whatever. And, if they do have big minions in the way, that's what Hunter's Mark is for, being able to Hunter's Mark their big guys and then just use the 1/1s to just kill them off. And then we have a lot of, we have the typical 1 Sea Giant just because we have a lot of weenies going on. You can get a fairly large board in the first few turns. So, especially in conjunction with Unleash the Hounds, being able to play Unleash the Hounds and then play Sea Giant for almost free is pretty sweet. So that is the Hunter deck for zoo-like shenanigans. It's a pretty fun deck. There's a lot of hard choices to make, so just like Zoo, it's quite a difficult deck to play, but I feel it has a lot of twists and turns that your opponent is not going to expect, especially since a lot of the time they might mulligan for cards like Kazan Mystic, when in reality we don't have any secrets. They might even mulligan for a Ooze or a Harrison Jones when we don't have any weapons in our deck. So we can throw quite a few curveballs with this Hunter deck and still keep a lot of pressure going on. So it is a very aggressive deck, just like Zoo, but still has the potential to throw some curveballs. The Trogs are trouble. So this is a sort of a more of a typical control warrior deck, but we're playing a little bit of a different end curve. Now, I don't really know why I built this deck. I think it's mostly just because I wanted to include Trogzor in the deck, and I think in a control deck is where Trogzor is the best. Because it's a 6/6 for 7, being a control deck, you have the best potential to protect it. Games are going to be going on longer, so cards like Trogzor, you can get extreme amounts of value out of it, and I don't know, Trogzor is one of those cards where I've really, really liked it. It's a card that is sort of like Sylvanas, where it creates a difficult board state. And instead of trading with your opponent's board, making it difficult to trade on the board, it sort of makes it difficult for your opponent to trade spells from their hand. And it's really good against the control matchups, because even if they do use a spell like a Fireball, or if they use an Execute on Trogzor, well, they're going to still create a body. So it's like, obviously, you're getting a Burly Rockjaw Trog, which is only 3/5, but it's still a body on the field, and it's still just sort of a sticky minion, I guess is what you could say. And I really like Trogzor. It can make for some difficult decisions, especially when you have other things on the board that your opponent might want to use spells to get rid of. It forces your opponent essentially to use their board to deal with Trogzor, or use some non-spell way to deal with Trogzor, unless they want to actually give you a 3/5. So I really like Trogzor in a control deck. It's pretty sweet. Other than that, it's a pretty stable control deck. We're also playing a little bit more of a early board presence game with Nerubian Eggs, because we have Inner Rages, Double Inner Rage, and Double Cruel Taskmaster. I also actually just got Gromash in a booster pack, so I'm actually going to take out Nefarian and put in Gromash, just because with Double Inner Rage and Double Cruel Taskmaster, and we have double Death Spite, we have just plenty of activators for Gromash, and that's just another win condition for us. But otherwise, we're playing a little bit more of a board presence type game. And we also have a Faceless Manipulator to work well with some of our other guys. Not really sure how I feel about Emperor Thaurissan in this deck, because we're not playing a combo or anything like that, so I might replace Emperor Thaurissan with something. It's been a while since I've updated this deck, but we're playing a little bit more of a proactive game plan with this Control Warrior deck, so as you can see by the spell choices, we're not as controlling. But I might even add a doubled Brawl if I want to, depending on how everything looks. I haven't played this one in a while, so not 100% sure how well it works out now. But when I did play with this deck, cards like Trogzor and stuff like that, they actually proved quite well. So I really like it, and I think Gromash is going to help the end game a lot. Obviously, Gromash is one of those cards where people are going to play around it, and they are usually expecting it in a control warrior deck. But I've never played with Gromash before, since I just opened it up today, and I sort of want to try it out. So. And, Emperor Thaurissan actually sort of works well with Gromash, just being able to play Gromash turn 7 rather than turn 6. Emperor Thaurissan into Gromash, pretty sweet. So, yeah, that's the Control Warrior deck I have. And Beastly Druid. So this is as you can tell by the name, a Boost Druid list. It's essentially sort of just another early board presence deck. But you can see a lot of Nerubian eggs in my decks. I don't know why. I just love Nerubian egg. I think it's just a very synergistic card, and that's one of my favorite types of cards that you can get extreme amounts of value out of it. So that is why I have Nerubian egg in a lot of my decks, just because it's really fun to play around, and there's a lot of cards in every single class that you can utilize Nerubian egg fairly effectively. So the idea with this deck is to just essentially cheat out very aggressive cards in your typical Innervate fashion, but the sort of the dream, I guess, play would be like turn 2 Haunted Creeper, turn 3 Innervate, Druid of the Fang. So turn 3 7/7, your opponent has BGH, or your opponent has a way to deal with it, or they sort of lose the game on the spot type of deal. So this is a very aggressive sort of deck where we want to get an early board presence. Another reason I like Nerubian Egg in Druid is not only is it board insurance, but it is a way for us to just have an extra body on for a Savage Roar. So like your opponent obviously doesn't want to crack it unless they have an exact answer to the 4/4 afterwards. So it can sort of just sit there, similar to you know, like Shade of Naxxramas. Sort of obviously Shade is better in a lot of ways in the sense that it grows and it has a little bit more flexibility. But we have a little bit more activators for Nerubian Egg, so that is why we're playing that. And also, like, playing Nerubian Egg plus Innervate Mark of the Wild is, again, so your opponent has to have a silence for it, or otherwise it's going to be just a really annoying minion to have on there. But yeah, not much to say there. It's pretty straightforward. We have enough beasts to make it work out, and essentially just get a quick board presence going on, get your 7/7 out as quickly as possible, hit them a few times, and then just use Savage Roars as a finisher. Pretty straightforward. Not very uncommon to actually you know, turn 6 Savage Roar, double Savage Roar, and get a really quick win that way. And also I like Druid of the Fang because it does pave the way for BGH if your opponent does have it. Well, it makes the way a lot easier for Dr. Boom. So pretty straightforward deck. This is a pretty fun deck as well. But yeah, not much to say there. Your opponent is going to be very confused when you play turn 2 Nerubian Egg in a Druid deck, but that's what I like, throwing curveballs. So Dragon Hands, this is pretty much just a handlock deck with dragons. I figured dragons would work pretty well in a handlock deck just because you're drawing through your deck fairly well, so activators for cards like Blackwing Corruptor are fairly easy to get. We are obviously sacrificing cards like owls and things like that, but it's pretty straightforward. There's not much to say here. I mean, a lot of the staple cards from handlock are in there, you know, Siphon Soul, Hellfire, Shadow Flame, Mountain Giants, Molten Giants, but we have even a heavier late game with Alexstrasza and Nefarian. Like, we have a bunch of BGH targets, so it's like, as long as you survive the early game, your late game is going to be so chock full of threats that your opponent will have to sort of win in the early game to actually be able to win against you. Especially, you know, I feel like because I have an even heavier late game with dragons, I needed a little bit of extra healing, so I have double anti-Keelbot. I think most handlock decks do have double anti-Keelbot, but I also added an Earthen Ring Farseer. It's just another early drop, so it's good against, it hedges against the early aggressive decks, gives us a body to trade with, gives us a little bit of healing, but we can also heal up our Ancient Watchers and anything that's taunted, so it's actually pretty good for that as well. So I really like the one of Earthen Ring Farseer. One Earthen Ring Farseer, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward handlock deck. But I really like the dragon element to it because, I mean, handlock decks already played Twilight Drakes and stuff like that, so I think just adding in a couple more dragons and adding in Blackwing Corruptors, it just gives you the potential for just even more tempo value and tempo plays, being able to just improve your board presence. And also Blackwing Corruptor is just, I really like the card. I mean, Fire Elemental is one of Shaman's best cards and one of the better cards in Hearthstone, so obviously giving sort of a Fire Elemental effect in other classes is pretty nice to have. And like I said, I mean, you're drawing through your deck so fast that it's very unlikely you won't be able to activate Blackwing Corruptor. Obviously, you know, it's RNG. You know, there are times where you don't have a dragon with Blackwing Corruptor in hand, but you are hedging for playing the longer game anyways, so I really like this deck. This deck is probably one of the more serious decks, obviously just because it's more of a staple handlock deck, but I think the dragons throw people off a little bit off guard, especially when they feel they just have to save their removal for the giants. Adding in a couple of dragons means that we can end the games much faster. One thing I like as well is Alexstrasza can actually be even more healing. You know, if we do happen to get rushed really early on and we set up our taunts, well, Alexstrasza can help us, give us a bit of healing, or we can just hit them for a bunch of damage and bring them down to 15, yeah, can end the game fairly fast that way. Alright, last deck. This is a deck I made just today, and this deck is actually really, really fun. I like this one a lot. It's sort of like a hybrid hunter in the sense that you are playing an aggressive game and a mid-range game, sort of all combined in one. I like this deck a lot. I don't really know how to explain it. It's got a lot of weird choices in it, you can obviously tell. Because there's a couple of cards that I've just really, really enjoyed. First off, I really like Timberwolf as a one-of when you're including Unleash the Hounds in a hunter deck. A, it's very, very cheap, so it's very easy to play alongside Unleash the Hounds. And B, it doubles the damage that you get from Unleash the Hounds, so you can end games a lot quicker. This is a pretty bursty deck. And we're sort of in the same game plan of just sort of having an early board presence and taking control of the early game with our weapons, traps, and favorable trades. And then moving into our mid game, we have a lot of just sort of either sticky minions that make other minions stickier, or just threats. It's a pretty fast deck, but we're obviously not playing just a bunch of 1 and 2 drops. So this is probably one of the harder decks that I've played, because it is a hunter deck and you know, face type thing, but because of the traps, because of our Houndmasters and stuff like that, I really liked Houndmaster. I've tested within a few other decks, and Houndmaster on Haunted Creeper, for example, with a coin turn 3 or something like that, you know, I've had people concede on that. They obviously just don't have the answer. It sort of draws out a silence. If they don't have a silence, well, it's a 3/3 taunt that produces 1/1s after on turn 3. Not to mention it protects our 4/3 Houndmaster after. It's really hard to deal with that, and we can just sort of take over the game from there. You have to sort of know when to use your spells for face or spells for removal. Typical of other sort of mid-range hunters and stuff like that, but I really like this hunter because obviously we're playing a little bit more of a beast element to it with double Houndmasters. But we have some pretty cool curves. For example, you know, turn 3, like, because we can have a pretty good way to deal with the board early on. If we can play Mukla on an empty board, turn 3, turn 4, we can Houndmaster it and make it a 7/7, hit them in the face for a bunch of damage. 7/7 taunt on turn 4, protecting a 4/3 as well. Pretty good deal if you ask me. If they have the BGH, well, I mean, they have the BGH, that just sort of happens, but they're still spending the majority of their tempo in turn 4 just removing your big threat, and not really doing much else. But on... if they don't have the BGH, or if they don't have any way to remove that 7/7 taunt, well, you can hit them in the face for a 7/7 damage again. In addition to, you know, having kill commands and stuff like that, you know, you can play turn 3 King Mukla, turn 4 Houndmaster, hit them for 7. On turn 5, if they don't have any removal for King Mukla, well, if you have a kill command or something like that, even just a kill command, you can use a kill command and hero power, plus hitting them for everything you have on the board. Well, that's, what is that, 11, 16, that's 18 damage. So from turns 4 to 5, you can hit them for 25 damage, which is pretty insane. So obviously you can end the games fairly quickly with that. So I really like this deck. This deck has a lot of burst potential, and it's, again, cards like Stampeding Kodo, for example, and Double Houndmaster, you know, people don't really play around those cards. And I like having the mix of traps that we have. So Freezing Trap and Snake Trap just makes the early trades and early game much better for us, because we don't have a bunch of 1/1s and 2 drops, or a bunch of 1 drops and 2 drops. So it's always nice to have. And we have plenty of beasts to work off of Houndmaster and kill commands, so that's always nice. Stampeding Kodo I've actually really liked as well. It helps against the early game, helps racing. Also can deal with cards like Acolyte of Pain, Imp Gang Boss without having to actually let them get value out of it. And it's a boss, you know, giving, you know, a target for Houndmaster, being able to make a 5/7 taunt is pretty strong. But yeah, not much to say there. I really liked Stampeding Kodo. No one really expects it. And it's a fun card to use. The one of Bestial Wrath. I really liked one of Bestial Wrath in a majority of my Hunter decks. Bestial Wrath, it helps a ton in the sense that it gives your beasts a little bit of extra reach, but whereas, you know, cards like Abusive Sergeant, you can help something trade up. Bestial Wrath sort of has the same effect, but you still get to keep your beast on board and not put it into some removal range. You know, for example, on King Mukla, we can use Bestial Wrath on it and kill like a Dr. Boom or something and still keep our King Mukla on board. I really like it for that, in that it sort of just preserves your sticky minions. But not only that, it can just help in just getting extra damage on the board. It's especially nice with Unleash the Hounds, making a 1/1 have a, you know, re-attack, trading with like a Piloted Shredder and still keep that 1/1 on the board for later on. Means that just we have bodies to use for the next turn. So rather than just trading something, we're spending, like, sometimes you spend a card to pump up something, but you use it for trading. You still lose that body. Bestial Wrath, you're spending a card to trade up, but you still got to keep that body around. So I really like Bestial Wrath. As a one of, it's pretty sweet. Not many people expect it, and it's just, yeah, you can get quite a bit of value out of it. So yeah, that's this deck. This deck, the Dragon Hands deck, and the Warrior Control deck are probably going to be what I'm going to be using for trying to, maybe I won't get to Legend. I probably won't get to Legend since I've never really passed rank 11, because I play more casually. I just mostly like building decks, so I don't play enough to probably make a push to Legend anyways. But I definitely want to try and get to maybe rank 5. That would be my goal next season. And I think I'm going to use the Trogzor Trouble deck, Dragon Hands, and Houndmaster Hunter for that push. I think there's a lot of flexibility in those decks. And I've always been a fan of more of the control type decks where you have a little bit more control over the game. I tried experimenting with playing more face decks like Face Warrior and stuff like that, but I never have any fun playing those decks because you don't make many fun decisions. And I don't feel like I have enough control over the game. It's more, okay, if my opponent has answers to my board, I just sort of lose. If they don't have answers, well, I win. It's a little pretty boring to play, those types of really aggressive face decks. So I like decks where you can make some very interesting choices. But yeah, those are the decks I've been working on. They're a lot of fun. So I mean, if you saw something in here that you enjoyed, or that you think you might enjoy playing, give it a try. Let me know if you make any changes to the deck lists, or if you have any success with these decks on the ladder, because obviously you guys probably play more than I do. I definitely build a lot of decks, but I still play pretty casually, so I'm gonna try and play more next season. But yeah, until then, you guys, take care. Glad to be actually having I'm glad to have a working computer finally, so you'll be seeing a lot more videos and articles from me in the future. And yeah, take care, you guys. Hope you guys have a great day, morning, night, wherever you are, and I will talk to you guys later.